And joining me now via Skype is Lee Hanna, Professor of Political Science at Wright State University. Professor, thanks for joining us today. And how are you? Hold on, Professor. Professor, hang on a second, because apparently everyone, hey, take a shot of the control room because everyone in there is drunk. Hang on a second, Professor. We're Canadians. It's the Blue Jays home opener, and everyone who's working on the show is just hammered. Can I hear you now? I can hear you now. Professor Hanna,
okay.
Thank you for joining us on opening day.
Thank you.
I want to get into the, first of all, let's talk a little bit about what the marijuana banking bill is, what exactly we're talking about, and then we can talk about how it's going to affect marijuana going forward.
Sure. So this was a bill that was started in the House Financial Services and, came out with a pretty strong vote, 45 for and 15 against. So there was some bipartisan support to get this out now to the House floor. And primarily what it is trying to do is protect banks to hold money in the marijuana industry.
Right.
Historically, banks have been in violation of U.S. federal law if they do hold marijuana money, and even when entrepreneurs, whenever they the few banks the few states that have changed the regulations, even there when marijuana industry goes through their process, they have to report it as a every time they bank with them, they have to report it as a legal activity. So it's just become a real mess, and it's made the industry here in the States a predominantly cash-only industry.
Right.
This means no credit card services, no loans for entrepreneurs, and a number of other aspects.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I know you will, but isn't part of the deal, I know they have to, the problem is they have to hold cash, and part of what's been an impediment to the, not just legalization, but companies getting involved, the impediment has been not being able to borrow money, not being able to conduct a business the way we do here in Canada. And so this House committee bill, is this a step, and then just a small step, I understand that, a step along the way to get these companies to be able to be registered and then to trade eventually, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and as you mentioned, the ability to get a loan has been very prohibitive for many entrepreneurs. The latest I've seen is it takes about $250,000 US to start one of these industries, and that's not an impossible loan to get, but that's a lot of cash for any entrepreneur to have. And so you're right, this would clear a huge hurdle. It's a part of a broader blueprint from one of the main advocates for marijuana reform in the U.S. House, Earl Blumenauer, and it goes along with some other policies. But I believe I've read that this is only the third time that any kind of standalone marijuana reform has even made it out of a committee in the U.S. House. So that's a pretty big deal.
It is interesting, and when you think about, there's a lot, I think there's 11 states now that have some form of legalization, and yet federally there doesn't seem to be the appetite, or hadn't been until now. I want to introduce you to Ed. Ed, we were sort of talking, Ed, about a Republican versus a Democratic issue, and Ed's theory, you said something about Trump would get reelected, he might make marijuana legal. What do you think of that?
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. A comment was made by one of the top financial guys in the country, and he just said, yeah, if Trump makes it legal, he's going to get back in power.
Elected.
Yeah.
Professor Hanna, what do you think of that?
I do think that he could win over some support if he would at least look towards descheduling the drug, and if marijuana were moved from Schedule 1 and put in a different schedule to where then it would have medical value. That would be just a really smart incremental step. It would allow for more medical testing. It would allow for the banks to be less fearful and everything else. And certainly, knowing where opinion is, especially youth vote, it could definitely help them at the margins with some people who maybe otherwise wouldn't vote, but would be excited about that at least.
Well, that's an interesting point because we have it became universally legal here last October, but it has been in stages of legality for some time. Specifically, the medical marijuana market. It has been around for several years, and maybe that's the stepping stone, as you say, getting it descheduled. Now, this particular reason that we're talking to the marijuana banking bill. I don't know. I know this isn't your thing, but in terms of it being a stock market play sometime in the future, it's got to have huge ramifications.
Sure. I mean, this is a huge burgeoning industry, and it's one that is, I think there's increasing demand to really pull it out of the shadows, just from a pure capitalistic perspective,
right.
Let alone, there's a lot of momentum. If you've been watching recent state laws, there's been quite a bit of criticism that marijuana enforcement in the U.S. has historically really affected communities of color. And the current way that marijuana is financed favors white entrepreneurs, and so there's even a push kind of from communities of color that if you would open up the banking, open up the financial opportunities for minority investors, that could be a bigger win kind of across a number of coalitions that are trying to move this policy forward.
This fine gentleman with us today is Professor Lee Hanna, political science at Wright State University. And before we let you go, sir, Dayton, Ohio, I understand, is where you're at today.
That is correct. Yes.
I want to ask two more things. Are you aware, or people in your circle of sphere of influence aware of the fact that Canada has legalized marijuana? Is that something you are aware of? I know some people are.
Yes, yeah. I think that there is some awareness, and in American politics research, we talk about the pressures that occur when border states adopt a policy. That other states may sense either that they're missing out on revenue, or that they're just kind of dealing with the spillover effects of a policy. So there has been some talk that by Canada, moving forward towards a more liberal legalization policy, that is going to add pressure in the U.S., particularly in the states on the border.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's funny you say border, because going back and forth, as we do a lot here in Canada, back and forth to the States. I don't know about you, Ed, but I've been back and forth a few times since legalization, and all we do is lie. We just lie.
Yeah.
Have you had any contact with marijuana in the last? No. What are you speaking of? What? Marijuana?
What?
Anyway, how about this? You can give us a little lesson in U.S. politics. Let me just move this. So it's the House committee.
Mm-hmm.
Now what happens? It gets. Does it need approval by Congress and the Senate? After, how far down the road is legalization from what happened today?
It's a great question. So this will now go to a floor vote in the U.S. House of Representatives, the lower chamber, and it is likely to pass unless there's some unforeseen kind of movement. There were a number of legislators that tried to push some amendments forward that kind of got shot down. This should go to a floor vote. Given that the Democrats have the numbers, it should get approved, and then it goes to the Senate. Our upper chamber, which is in Republican control.
Right.
There is one Republican senator, Cory Gardner, out of Colorado, representing the first state to legalize recreational. Yep. He's been very vocal in support of, we need to get this policy at the federal level kind of on board, because there are a lot of Republican legislators now in states with medical or recreational marijuana, and they're just exhausted of this song and dance with the federal government. So there will be at least some Republican support, but, as far as broad support yet in the Republican Party, I don't know, what the future holds in the Senate. It will probably get amended to some level. If it does get through, passed back down to the House, and then if all that occurs successfully, it would go to the president's desk. And I think Trump would probably sign this. That would be my hunch. I don't think Trump himself is much of a prohibitionist, as much as sometimes his Department of Justice seems to be.
Okay. Well, you know, in the end, and we're no different, in the end it all comes down to who's going to make money off this. And well, no, it's true. It's at some point in the history of this in the States, it will be somebody made a deal. There was an opportunity, and somebody saw the opportunity for growth, for market growth, and for jobs, and at the end, that's what will get it through.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's been a long game here, but it does seem like the momentum's really picked up.
Well, you know, yesterday we had a 29-year-old CEO of $1 billion weed company on, and Ed and I were like, how old is this kid? And we're thinking the same thing now. How are you a professor? You're like 20. How old are you?
I am 37.
Oh, please. 37.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Grow up.
Good for you.
Good for you. Hey, Lee Hanna.
What's
that, sir?
What's that?
Well, we're all just yelling over each other. Lee, thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Lee. You're a good man. That's Lee Hanna, the professor, Department of Political Science.
Yeah.
He knows what he's talking about.